Check 1 2. Check 1 2. So I guess I could have these headphones on the whole time.
You could be a headphone guy.
I could be a headphone guy.
Yeah, a lot of podcasters be headphones.
Should we try it out?
We could try it out. Yeah,
Couldn't hurt.
couldn't hurt.
I don't see how it could.
No.
Should we get
What
started?
would hurt?
Should we get started on the actual podcast?
Welcome to the Play to Win podcast, where we talk about winning in cEDH. I'm Cam.
And I'm Dylan. Today we're talking about the best creatures in all of cEDH.
Yes, so we're going to go through all of the creatures that you would normally find in the 99. So we're not going to be talking about any...
No commanders.
No commanders
No
today.
Timnas. No Nagilas.
No.
Those would be in the list. If you want to hear that list, you can let us know, but that's not today's list.
No, maybe some other time. But
Maybe another day.
Today we're going to be talking about cards in the 99. And we have a couple of honorable mentions I'd like to go over real quick before we officially get started.
Of course.
These are some really powerful creatures that maybe in different metas might end up being in the top 10. But right now, I don't see these being there. The first one of these is Gilded Drake.
Oh, Gilded Drake is first. I would have put Gilded Drake a little bit closer to the 10.
These aren't in any order.
Okay.
This is just...
Gilded Drake is really good. The issue that I have with Gilded Drake is outside of green decks, outside of Neoform and Eldritch Evolution, I just don't find it quite as powerful recently. I've been leaning on more things like Phantasmal Image so that I can copy dock sides. Taking somebody else's commander can kind of screw them up, but oftentimes it can't help you a ton. So the things that you want to be taking are like Rhystic Studies. Timnas are good to take, but there's not always a Timna. Either way, the Gilded Drake isn't always relevant. A lot of the times the creature effects that are good recently are the ETB's effects, or it's like a static ability. So if you take the Collector Roof, that doesn't really change anything because Collector Roof is still out there.
Right. There was a couple that aren't like that. Opposition Agent is one you can take.
Drannith Magistrate.
Those are the two that I would say are the best you could take. On the commander side of things, it really works out for you if you are either disrupting someone, like taking their Gitrog or their Nagila, and now like their whole win condition is totally gone.
But I don't really love doing that because oftentimes it doesn't help you progress your board. You're just stopping them.
Yeah, having a Nagila does literally nothing for you.
Right, yeah. It just stops the Nagila player from doing anything, which can be good, but then the other two players are going to kind of run away with the game. That doesn't mean Stop Gilded Drake is still an incredible card, but I think recently there's just been so many good creatures printed that it's been pushed out a little bit.
Yeah, and again, like in certain metas, like if you see a ton of Kenrith, like yeah, Gilded Drake might end up being in your top 10. Yeah. But in a general meta, I wouldn't say so. Yeah. The second honorable mention is Phantasmal Image,
which is kind of the same as Gilded Drake, as replaced Gilded Drake in a lot of decks because of the dockside thing I mentioned earlier. If Image can redo a dockside, whereas Gilded Drake can't really do anything with that dockside extortionist.
But it still gives you a lot of the upside of Gilded Drake, where instead of trading with someone's creature, now you also get their Timna or something else like that.
Yeah,
too.
and a lot of times that can be better, right? Like we just said, like that it can be better to copy somebody else's creature than just gain control of it.
Yeah. The other one is Archivist of Agma. That's our final honorable mention here.
Yeah, this one's a new one. I think if we had some more time to play with it, it might make this top 10, but it's just hard to tell because it's kind of new. It seems like it's been drawing me a lot of cards recently.
I feel like for me, it's been really good too. I feel like I've always drawn a bunch of cards off of it.
3 to 5 is kind of where I've averaged on this card, I feel like, and to me, for a 2-mana creature, that's worth it.
3 cards and 3 life too.
Yeah, the life gain can be something with that.
Right, yeah, like the 1 life isn't that too much, but by the time you're gaining an additional 5 life with 5 additional cards, like that can really get you into a whole different ball game. So those were our 3 honorable mentions. So we're going to dive right into our top 10, the nitty-gritty stuff right here. So our number 10 card we have for the Play to Win top 10 is
drumroll please.
Dauthi Voidwalker.
Yeah, dude, Dauthi is really good.
Should we read the card?
Yeah, let's read it.
We should read the card. I didn't even think about reading the card.
In case you're listening, since it's a podcast, maybe you don't know what Dauthi is.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe you have us on like somewhere and you can't.
I would imagine most of these creatures you will have seen many times if you've played or viewed any games of cEDH, but if you haven't and you're looking to get familiarized with the format, this is a great way to do it.
So Dauthi Voidwalker is 2 black for a 3/2 creature Dauthi Rogue. It has Shadow, and if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, instead exile it with a Void counter on it. You can also tap and sacrifice Dauthi Voidwalker to choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a Void counter on it. You may play it this turn without paying its mana cost.
Yeah.
That line at the bottom is what makes this card incredibly bonkers.
Yeah, really powerful. Acts as like a rest in peace effect. Stops
Yeah.
Underworld Breach wins. Stop a lot of Gitrog shenanigans. Gitrog isn't a deck that sees a ton of play, but any graveyard stuff this deck is really good against. Not only that, but it can help in a counter war. If you exile somebody else's counter war while you're in the middle of one, now you get to sack the Dothy and use that counter war. I really like Dothy a lot.
And it seems to me like a lot of people don't mind feeding a Dothy the same way that they feed a Fissure or a Rhystic Study. So I think you're going to end up finding a lot of like tutors and a lot of mana and a lot of card draw off of them too. Maybe just not like ad nauseum, but that's still a lot of really good cards you can cast for free.
And that's a good point. Is that you can't really cast it on you can't really cast an ad nauseum while Dothy Voidwalker is in play, because then somebody else, once it resolves, they get to fire off an ad nauseum right afterwards. Now you just know, so maybe you'll have the counter magic for it, but still it's risky to give them to him. So it's going to make everyone second think everything that they do while the Dothy's out.
Especially if the ad naus player is trying to go for an Underworld Breach line and then they realize I can't do this anymore.
No, the only really issue with Dothy Voidwalker is that it has the double black pips, which can be a little bit hard to cast in the 4-color, 5-color decks, which are like the best decks in the format. So it can be tricky in those decks, but if you're willing to get double pip for ad nauseum, I think it's normally worth it to try to get Dothy Voidwalker, especially in Tymna decks. That Shadow is relevant.
So Shadow is a weird downside in Tymna sometimes too, because like you can draw, but now you're giving up the ability to sacrifice it and actually cast something for free. So
yeah, that'll bite you in the ass too, especially if you had a Force of Will in that pile and now you can't cast it because you tried to draw it with the Tymna instead.
And also, like, you can't block with your shadow creature either.
That's important to remember about that.
Like,
can't block.
The card that shuts down this card the most is Dranith Magistrate. And if you were able to like block Dranith Magistrate, this seems much better.
Right, yeah. Dranith being able to shut off Dothy Voidwalker kind of is another thing that puts it a little bit lower. Maybe there's a bunch of things that put it a little bit lower in the top 10. Still a very powerful card. And I think if you're playing black, almost without a shadow of a doubt, you are considering Dothy. If you're in ad nauseum or if you're in stacks decks, this is the best. If it's in your stacks decks, it's even better. If you're in ad nauseum decks, I could understand not wanting it sometimes because you just want all gas. But this can be gas. Like this ends up being extra stuff a lot of times if your opponents just like continue to cast their spells.
You never know what people are willing to feed you, and I think you'd be surprised what people would give you with Dothy Voidwalker sometimes. The other thing that I think keeps this card down is that it does obey timing restrictions.
Yeah.
So if there is a creature that you really want to play, the Dockside Extortionist that someone sacrificed, you do have to play that on your turn, and you can't go for like instant speed that into Cyclonic Rift.
Yes, that would make this card very, very broken, I think. So I'm happy that was a little bit nerfed in a couple ways, and that was one of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I think that all together means Dothy Voidwalker is a great place to start at number 10. So we're going to move on to number 9, and this one here is the classic Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, Birds of Paradise. Yeah. One of the few, kind of spoilers, but one of the few non-new cards. This is the oldest card on this list, I imagine, coming from Alpha.
Definitely is the oldest card on this list. I don't think anyone's ever talked about Birds of Paradise before.
Yeah, I'm sure we will have a ton of new information to bring to the table about Birds of Paradise. It goes in play in every green deck, almost likely, right? No matter what, you're at least playing a Birds of Paradise.
Definitely.
The mana rate is unmatched. Nothing else does what Birds of Paradise does.
As well as Birds of Paradise.
There's a ton of things that do relatively what Birds of Paradise does, but
none of them hit that upper echelon where Birds of Paradise is.
Being able to cast any color, that's tap for any color it's very good.
Certain statistics show that this is actually the second most played creature in cEDH, which I think makes sense because if you are playing green, you are playing Birds of Paradise.
Oh, almost without a doubt, especially if your commander is a 3-drop or if you have important spells that are 3-drops in your deck.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It worked well in Standard, it worked well in Modern, and it works really well in cEDH too.
And of course, not only that, being able to double spell is extremely important in cEDH. If you can gain some of that tempo, Birds of Paradise helps you do that. We don't have to talk about why mana production is good. Birds is just really good.
It's on the cEDH scale, like it's even better in decks like Food Chain, where it can make you 3 mana in like certain bursts like that too. Which is extra nuts too. Not only can you use it to play Food Chain on turn 2, but you can exile it immediately for more shit.
And even better, it doesn't feed Dockside Extortionist. So
even better,
mana that doesn't feed Dockside.
It also doesn't feed Mystic Remora too, which also comes up quite a bit. And this is really one of the only formats where bolting the bird doesn't really come up. So your Bird of Paradise is much more likely to stay alive in EDH versus any other format here.
Yeah, bolting the bird is really not very good. Yeah, exactly. So it'll be good.
Yeah, so it's a clear number 9. Birds of Paradise, I would say. Number 8, we're going to step back into black, and we're going to talk about Opposition Agent. This is our number 8 here. I mean, even Mind Sensor was already a great stacks piece, right?
And this is that times 1,000.
Times 1 billion, I would say, right?
Should we say what Opposition Agent does?
Oh, we didn't read Birds of Paradise.
Oh, taps for a mana of any color.
Yeah, it's the 1 green and for an 0-1 with flying.
You know what Birds is. It's on the
we
screen.
know what Birds is, yeah. So Opposition Agent. This is also one of the top cards played in cEDH. This is the third card played in cEDH. Third most played card in cEDH.
According to cEDH.guide.
Correct, yes.
Wait, let me see if I can guess what Opposition Agent does.
Please, yes.
2 generic mana and 1 black, 3 total colorless for a human. I am already not sure. I want to say it's like a human rogue.
You're absolutely correct.
Incredible. A human rogue that says when an opponent, the exact wording I'm going to get a little bit wrong, I think, but when an opponent.
The point is to get the exact wording.
Fuck, okay, tell me how many words I'm off. Fuck. When an opponent searches their library, you control them for as long as they're searching their library. You may exile. I'm not sure. You may exile a card and cast it. What is it?
So it says Flash.
Oh, right.
So it says Flash. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast them.
Yeah, this card's really great.
This is one of the best creatures they've ever printed for EDH, just in general.
I would say it's not good against fetch lands, even though that is the big fear is that you could get on the fetch. Most people, you're not going to activate on the fetch. You want to get something better with that. You want to use it for its real thing, shutting off somebody's demonic tutor and getting with anything that you want to get instead.
Yeah, I don't think fetch lands are enough value off of Opposition Agent.
Sometimes if you're playing like a stacks deck and you just want to like stay on tempo, get the Oppo out early and just, it's the third player in Tornora and no one else is tutoring, yeah, it's fine. But I think more often than not, especially if you are in any type of like stormy strategy, like Underworld Breach or Ad Nauseam and stuff, you want to wait until you can use that Opposition Agent to steal like a tutor or a counterspell or something like that, right?
Yeah, like
you want to be able to get what you steal with the Oppo.
Exactly, and most of the time you're not necessarily looking to disrupt your opponent, even though you are grabbing a card out of their library. Right. A lot of the times, what you're trying to do is either get something that's going to help you to progress and get your combo piece, or you're getting something that's going to protect you. Yeah. Pactive Negation is one of my favorite things if I'm getting it off of like a Vamp tutor or a Demonic tutor. Just having that ability to have extra free protection for whenever I need it is really powerful.
And it's also good to like note that the ability of you stealing somebody's thing, it's not going to come up a second time. No one's going to cast into it unless they make a mistake, and that's just it's not going to happen as often. So it does act as just like a stack speaks on the board that like your opponents can't search their library on a 3/2 for 3 with Flash, which is like really good in Tymna stack strategies. So even if you're not using it to gain that pact of negation or something like that, just it being on the board, it's going to accrue so much value, stopping your opponents from doing stuff over a long time.
Yeah, and Flash on stacks is also such an upside too. The gotcha moment is incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, this is cEDH is a format of tutors. Every deck is playing as many tutors as they can that are under 2 mana, a couple of 3 mana ones, but really they're getting as many tutors as they can into their decks. Opposition Agent is going to be live a ton, and that's how we find our win conditions. Where a lot of us were playing A plus B win conditions. The only way you do that is by finding a combo. You need a tutor to get to one of the combo pieces. Oppo, it stops things in a ton of different ways.
Yeah, so you get to these situations where like as the player against Oppo, you look down at your hand and you have like 4 cards that search your library between a fetch land, a Neoform, a crop rotation, and like something else. So it really does pull its weight in the format. There's a lot of funny interactions that can come up too. One of my favorites is using your Wishclaw talisman to search your library for your own Opposition Agent, and then when your opponent goes to search, you just Oppo them.
Yes.
And they get something out of their deck. It feels great. And then the final person just never gets the opportunity to Wishclaw talisman because now you have this thing in play.
You can also find, what's the card, Marin, I think, or the one that doesn't allow people to draw for turn, instead makes them tutor at the beginning of the library.
That's a great point.
Yeah, let's put that one on screen. I think it's called Mariner.
Marilyn
the song, Marilyn the Sun song. What is it?
It's not Marin.
Something with an M. One more thing I wanted to mention about fetches. Even though Opposition Agent isn't normally the best thing to do in response to a fetch, it does shut off fetch lands after it's already in play, which is really good if you get the Oppo in play early. A lot of decks are playing fetch lands, so you're going to shut off like a good chunk of their mana. Probably like 10 out of their 30 total lands are now shut off with the Oppo in play. It doesn't really matter what that Baron card is. It's on screen right now. If you're listening to it, though, you're fucked. You got to go watch on YouTube now.
Yeah.
You'll never know.
Or you're sitting there and you're screaming at
It's
your
Marilyn the
phone.
Morning Song or whatever the hell that
We
card
were
is.
getting the second part right.
It combos with Dockside and a little bit of a lock that says your opponents can no longer draw cards, but instead they search their library when they would. But opposition agent says that they can't do that. You'll get it instead. So it's pretty good together, but they can be easily disrupted with some removal or something.
Yeah, exactly.
You think we can move on to the next one?
I think we're good to go to our number 7. So our number 7 is actually Simian Spirit Guide. This is 2 in a red for an Ape Spirit. It's a 2/2. That's all relevant. It's actually not. You just exile Simian Spirit Guide from your hand to make a red mana.
This card is incredible. A Lotus Petal that does not trigger your opponent's Rhystic Studies.
No.
It's not a spell for Rule of Law. It can start you on a Gamble after an Ad Nauseam, or an Underworld Breach after an Ad Nauseam, or a Dockside Extortionist after an Ad Nauseam to let you really, begin going through your win after an Ad Nauseam. It's really good. Did I say that it was good with Ad Nauseam?
It's really
it can
good
help you
with
cast Ad Nauseam.
Yeah, right? It's good pre and post, right? One of my favorite things is you go, okay, exile Simian Spirit Guide, cast Rite of Flame, and now I'm into Dockside or Underworld Breach from there. And it gets so easy to put wins together after you have Simian Spirit Guide. So much better than its original cousin, the Elvish Spirit Guide, because Elvish Spirit Guide doesn't let you cast Dockside Extortionist or Underworld
Yeah,
Breach.
green is just worse than red, and for basically that reason only, Simian Spirit Guide is better than Elvish Spirit Guide. Although Elvish Spirit Guide is still really good if you're in green and you're not playing very slow stacks, and even if you are playing very slow stacks, I think it's a worthy include. I was playing it in Blood Pod before I took it apart.
Yeah, I would still play it in Jund Ad Nauseam decks too. I still really like it in there.
I don't love it in Thrasios decks.
No.
I haven't really ever loved it in mid-range Thrasios decks that can make a ton of mana in a bunch of other ways. Although I do know some of the evolution Thrasios decks do use the Spirit Guide. It can be good no matter what. The card's going to be good.
Sometimes just having that 1 mana, you're always saying in a game, I'm one
more
mana
mana.
off.
Yep.
If I had one more
mana.
mana, I'd be able to do that. And Simian Spirit Guide can always be that 1 more mana. I think part of the reason why it's not higher on this list is just because there are, like you said, a lot of decks that aren't looking for this type of mana. Thrasios decks need something that's going to be a little bit more longer lasting.
You don't want a 2-for-1 yourself just to burst out something quick in some of those decks.
Completely different than a turbo deck.
If you're playing in Turbo, absolutely. And even if you're playing in stacks, getting a Collector Roof on turn 1 is a world different than getting a Collector Roof out on turn 2. So for that reason alone, I do think it's worth considering this card, but it's just not a slam dunk of a card. The Simian Spirit Guys, both of them, they're not a slam dunk of cards in the slower decks.
You know what? How do you feel about it in Winota?
I love it in Winota.
Right.
Yeah, it's the best in Winota because you want to get out Winota as quickly as possible, or any of your sack pieces as quickly as possible. Yeah, so for that reason, maybe you should be playing it in all the decks.
Right? Yeah, maybe there are more than just turbo decks.
I think maybe just the mid-range decks, the ones that don't really want a 2-for-1 themselves, those are the decks that don't want it. And even then, sometimes they do.
The other thing that I really like about this card is that it gives people the element of surprise, because unlike a Lotus Petal, you actually get to keep it in your hand and people don't know that you have it. Yep. So I love when people think that your Pact of Negation is going to kill you when, nope, you just exile Simian Spirit Guide and tap your 4 lands, play your 5th land, and then that way you're still in okay shape. Love it for Flusterstorm, Spell Pierce scenarios where people think that they got your spell countered, and then again, sometimes just that 1 extra mana is all that you need. So Simian Spirit Guide, I think, is
phenomenal card that you'll never cast as a creature.
No, never. Moving on to number 6. Number 6 is Grand Abolisher. I didn't look it up. But Grand Abolisher has some really powerful text on it.
Your opponents can't cast spells, activate creatures, or land abilities.
Or artifact abilities.
Or artifact abilities.
2 white, which is its biggest downside, I would say.
Yeah, the double pips is bad.
But it's a human cleric. It's a 2/2. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments.
I would say that we are living in a Rhystic Study world right now in cEDH. I see a lot of Rhystic Study, Esper Sentinel, that type of effect dominating games. And Grand Abolisher says, I no longer care that the Rhystic Study player has 30 cards in their hand. I'm going to try to win anyway, so long as I can resolve resolve this Grand Abolisher. Now, there's a ton of negates in the format and much less hard counters in the format. By negates, I mean things that counter like non-creature spells like Swan Song and An Offer You Can't Refuse and Miscast and stuff like that. There are less hard counters. I really think there's only just like Force of Will, Pact of Negation, Mana Drain, and what's the one that can exile any number of spells?
Mindbreak
Trap.
Yeah.
Besides that, maybe Daze doesn't see a ton of play, and that one's hard. There's really not that many hard counters, and once that Grand Abolisher is in play, a lot of decks are either going to be able to win the game or get a significant advantage. The card is just shutting all of your opponents off entirely 100%, besides channeling a land or something like that, which is a new way to stop this. Channeling an Otawara would be really good against Grand Abolisher. This is the card that I think a lot of decks normally end up fighting over, because once it resolves, you can go for the win after that, and against 3 opponents, that is just really good.
Oh yeah, and it's so easy to sneak this card into play too. Neoform, Eldritch Evolution, Court of Calling, all these cards just put a creature directly into play, and by that time, it's too late to use your Force of Will. It's too late to float mana for a Lightning Bolt even, right? It's just in play and your opponents can't do anything about it. It makes your opponents play completely differently too. The player before the Grand Abolisher player has to remember that they have to fetch their fetch lands on someone else's turn than they're normally used to. And that's just one scenario.
Yeah. Hey everyone, Cameron and Post here. What I just said about fetch lands is not actually true. Fetching for a land with a fetch land can still be done underneath a Grand Abolisher. It's just things like Mystical Tutor that you have to make sure that you cast on someone else's end step instead of the Grand Abolisher player's end step. So that's just all I wanted to say. Please go back to the podcast.
A good thing to do with Grand Abolisher in your deck is you can also do things like using an Eldritch Evolution on your commander. Maybe it's a Bruise or something like that. Sacrificing and thinking, tricking your opponents, telling them that you're going to get a Seedborn Muse, basically. Don't actually lie, but they'll assume that you're probably getting a Seedborn Muse once you Eldritch Evolution your Bruise. You can instead get anything that's 6 mana or less. You get that Grand Abolisher, they can no longer respond. So that if you have a win condition after that, you'll be able to win, and they didn't really have an opportunity to stop you, which is really good.
Yeah, Otawara is literally the only thing that gets around this, which is really, really annoying, because the times that they do have Otawara for Grand Abolisher, it is going to feel really bad.
Because it's literally the only thing that gets you out of that situation. Grand Abolisher literally has one answer in the format. I guess that's not true. It has a hard counter on the stack, but once it's in play, the only answer that exists is Otawara. There's some split second thing or something, but no, not even that, because you can't cast anything. Yeah, once the Grand Abolisher is in, you're done. So you need to stop it on the stack, and that can be hard to do with, like Cameron said, when there's so many things like Neoform, Court of Calling in the format.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just definitely something when you're playing against the white deck. Normally, they are just playing white for these kind of effects. Yeah. So it's definitely something you want to be careful of, that Grand Abolisher does that some of the others don't. That being said, this is not higher on this list because it's only the 3rd best silence effect, I would say. So we'll talk about some of the other better silence effects coming up here. We're going to move on to our top 5. And to round out our top 5, to start it off here, is Drannith Magistrate. This is 1 and a white for a 1/3 creature human wizard. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands.
Yeah, Drannith Magistrate. This is a card that if you can get it out on turn 1 and you're on the play, I think your hand is a keep no matter what. The card's that strong. There's a few cards like that exist. Mystic Remora, Rhystic Study, any of these cards that draw you cards from turn 1 on, Drannith Magistrate, add that to the list, because number 1 being it stops all of your opponent's commanders. Obviously, that's great to get it out as early as possible, but it stops a lot of win conditions, Unworld Breach, and a lot of other weird things too. It shuts off a ton of stuff. You can't cast things with Opposition Agent. You can't cast things with Dothi Voidwalker.
Yeah, 2 of the cards on this list we've already talked about get shut off.
Some of the best creatures in the format are shut off by Drannith Magistrate. It's just, I feel like it's one of the most powerful creatures in the format. It's really strong.
It really is. Yeah, I mean, a card that was printed in Standard to stop Foretell from being
was it for Companion? I thought it was to stop Companion.
It also stopped Companion too, because you were just taking it from your companion zone and casting it directly into play,
and
right?
Now it doesn't even stop Companion anymore.
No, yeah, exactly, right? But now it's basically around to stop your commander from coming out.
Stops Food Chain Winds.
Stops Food Chain Winds, right? Yeah, you can't cast the creatures from exile in that case. So there's really a lot of as you keep playing Magic, you'll just keep finding more scenarios where Drannith Magistrate ends up being very good.
The only thing that I don't like about Drannith Magistrate is that a couple cards we talked about in our honorable mentions, Gilded Drake and Phantasmal Image, can turn your Drannith Magistrate against you, which can be very horrible. I have omitted Drannith Magistrate from some very fast lists if I'm not really looking to do anything like, interact with my opponents or anything, some Mad Farm list, stuff like that, but I'm not even sure if that's correct. The card is just so powerful, I almost wonder if it should just go in every single deck that can play it.
Well, it's such a good Tymna body too, right? A 1/3 is enough to deal damage for when it can get through.
It blocks Tymna.
It blocks Tymna. It survives against a lot of the 2-power creatures in play. I think a 1/3 is actually a really solid, like Thrasio stats right there. Really point to how good this card can really be in play too. Not only that, but you also have Hardlock potential with this card. This effect with Possibility Storm or Uba Mask, cards that make it so that your opponents can't play cards from their hand and they have to play cards from exile. They just set up scenarios where your opponents can't play cards at all.
Yeah.
This is not a symmetrical effect, so you're still able to play cards. Like, you can totally create wins through that Hardlock.
Definitely, yeah. I think Possibility Storm is a great thing that doesn't see a ton of play in cEDH or doesn't see a ton of play with cards like Drannith Magistrate, but I feel like it should because of how powerful it is, especially with other white things like Rule of Law effects that work also really well with Possibility Storm. I've been thinking about trying Possibility Storm in Winota recently. I know a couple people have done that. That's, like you said, it's a really strong addition to Drannith Magistrate, that not only is it like one of the most powerful stacks pieces in the format, but it has potential to actually lock out the game and win you the game entirely with like as an A plus B combo.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about Drannith Magistrate. I think we covered everything else. Yeah. Our number 4 card is Esper Sentinel. Very excited that we're talking about a lot of white cards.
A lot of white cards. So far. Yeah, white creatures have gotten a huge boost recently for cEDH.
Yeah, so this is 1 white for a 1/1 artifact creature human soldier. It says whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. So at base, this is
one. They're just gonna make them pay one,
right?
Which is pretty
That's
good
not too
heuristic
bad.
study. They're not gonna be able to do that all the time.
No,
I love this card.
This is one of the best cards in the universe.
It's just straight up one of the best cards in the format.
Yeah. I mean, if you paired this up against Yu-Gi-Oh cards, against Pokemon cards, like this would outrank so many of them too.
Yeah, especially in our format, being able to get you cards off of multiple opponents is really good. Heuristic study effect. This effect, whenever an opponent does blank, I get some type of card advantage unless they pay. This is a good model. Anytime you see that model on a card, I think it's worth looking at. And this one being only 1 mana is one of the best things for that.
It's got upsides to Mystic Remora, where you don't have an upkeep cost to pay
for it. It's around forever.
Exactly, but it's also much more similar to Heuristic Study, where it's just the 1 mana.
It's payable.
There are decks like Rafine that can up that cost. So if you can put +1/+1 counters on Esper Sentinel and get it to a point where there's no way in hell your opponents are paying for it, it can really gain you a lot more advantage that way. The limiting to 1 per turn is definitely a bummer, but it happens for each of your opponents. So if counter wars start to happen, you can certainly get multiple cards in one player's turn too.
Yeah, it's just the potential card advantage, especially in white, being very tutorable, being very easy to cast, makes this card just a slam dunk. At any point in the game, it's going to be good, except for maybe, I guess, like the super late game. But even then, if you're ready to have a counter war, this one's going to be helpful. It's going to draw you a couple extra cards.
Yeah, definitely. And it ups your artifact count too, which I think is also something that not a lot of people think about.
Good for Mox Opal, bad for Dockside Extortionist.
Yeah, exactly. Also good for like Spire of Industry too, if that comes up. But Mox Opal is usually the reason why you're also now able to include this and feel a lot better about it too.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd love Esper Sentinel. Fish Stick, Heuristic Buddy. It's got a ton of great names, but definitely worth being the 4th best card in cEDH.
If you're playing white, this is in your deck.
100%.
Right? If you're playing white, all of these creatures almost without a doubt, especially like the last... Simian, what was Simian Spirit Guide? What were the 1-2 above Simian Spirit Guide?
Well, Drannith Magistrate and Grand Abolisher.
No, sorry, the other direction.
Dothy Voidwalker.
And Opposition Agent.
Birds of Paradise.
Birds of Paradise.
Every single white card that we're talking about on this list, for the most part, are going to be in your
Basically,
list.
yeah. If the card is on this list, you should be playing the card. Maybe not should, but I would if I was playing a
Drannith Magistrate's the only one of the white cards that we've talked about some
maybe
flexibility
not
with.
But
I don't know.
Then, I think
what?
I'm wrong on that.
You know what white cards in every single white deck though, and it definitely should be, Ranger Captain of Eos.
Yeah.
AKA Stinky Socks.
Yeah, stinky socks. What does this card do?
So Ranger Captain of Eos.
We all know, but tell us again.
Ranger Captain of Eos is 1 and 2 white for a 3/3 creature human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with CMC 1 or less, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. You know what? Side note, I always forget that it is or less.
Yeah, you can choose Memnite.
Yeah, if there are 0 drops that you want, you can go get that. Holy shit.
You can also get Dryad Arbor.
Dude, holy cow, yeah. Shuffle Ranger. Nope. Sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn.
Only non-creatures.
Only non-creatures.
Pretty relevant, though.
Very relevant. The first half of the card. Let's talk about the first half of the card.
Searching for a 1-drop.
Actually, the first quarter of the card. The 3 mana for a 3/3. The 3/3 body is like the biggest thing on the ground in
Oftentimes,
cEDH.
yeah, it's gonna be the biggest thing. It'll trade with Najeela and everything else.
Trades with Najeela, Tymna, like the 2 most important attackers
yeah,
in
just
the
straight up
format.
blocks Tymna.
Right? It's a great Tymna attacker if you have it too.
Good in slow decks and stacks if you want to slow things down. It's good in fast decks if you want to protect your shit.
It really is, yeah. And it's also normally card draw too, because most of the time it's also going to get you an Esper Sentinel as well.
Yeah, let's talk about the thing that it gets. Most often you're getting Esper Sentinel.
Most often you're getting Esper Sentinel.
Sometimes you're getting DRC, Dragon's Rage Channel, to get some scries or surveils.
There's really like 2.5 other categories that are to this. There's mana that you're getting.
Birds of Paradise,
Birds
Ragavan.
of Paradise or Ragavan. Or Orcish Lumberjack too.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
I've gotten when decks
make
that
a lot
can
of
play
mana.
Orcish Lumberjack with it as well can really up your mana if that's what you're looking for. Or Beaters is the other category too.
Sarah Ascendant.
Sarah Ascendant is another very popular white card in these like mid-range ad nauseum decks, and that can also be really good if you need to get your life total up or if you need to threaten someone else's life total.
You know what else? What other cards I like? Allosaurus Shepherd.
Ooh, that's also a good
Give you
one.
some extra protection. Make sure your green stuff are uncounterable. Your Ranger Captain will be able to help with that, but in case it can't, this is a little bit extra for that. And also Sylvan Safekeeper for other extra protection if you want to protect your creature. If you're like a creature-based combo, I think that can be a great find with Ranger Captain.
You know, if we're also talking about combo cards like Quirion Ranger is also a really good combo card that if you are trying to untap some stuff, I don't know what color combination you're in. Maybe you're in a Selesnya deck, but
yeah, what's what's
like Sisay.
No, the green-white one that is like the mono green one. Not Yisan, but
The green-white one.
green Lamborghini. What's the fast mono green deck?
Savala.
Silvala, the green-white Silvala.
Oh, the green-white
Green-white
Savala.
Silvala might use Ranger Captain to find Quirion.
There you go.
There you
That
go.
could be a great scenario for that too. But it's really the protection and interaction for the silence effect that you get there that really makes this so good.
Yep. Completely agree.
Yeah, I feel big alarms go off when someone cracks this in their upkeep.
Oh yeah, it's super scary. You can't do any counter spells, no force of wills, nothing like that. This can help protect your win condition, like we said already. This can help stop somebody else from winning the game. It's good both ways.
Yeah, again, the only downsides are the channel lands and like endurance are really the only things that come up that can really blow you out still.
Endurance is still a creature, so it can still be cast even through the Ranger Captain. Something like Solitude would be something like that. Would also something to worry about.
That's true. Yeah, Solitude. Yeah, those kind of flash creatures. Technically, if you're going to search your library, then like even Mind Sensor and stuff. But a lot of the times when you're going to crack, when you're going to crack it on your turn, you are trying to protect yourself from things like counter magic at that point. So really opens you up. On the interaction side, though, the other downside is that there are people that will just make you pop the Ranger Captain of Eos instead of countering the spell on the stack.
Just because they see it's on board, somebody's going for something. They say, "Oh well, Cameron has a Ranger Captain, so he better sacrifice it." And you kind of have no, you have no option. You sort of have to. So sometimes like you are forced to do it a little bit early. But even then, like, great, you stopped yourself from losing. That's good still.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And now someone else has a counter spell to stop someone else the next time.
Right. You just gotta wait. Gotta be patient then when that happens.
In the meantime, you got an Esper Sentinel, so you'll be able to rebuild.
And one of the best things about this card is it's also card advantage on top of the other thing. Not only is it an immediate card advantage, and it finds you a card and puts it into your hand. That's a card drawn.
It replaces
basically.
itself.
That's the card. You know what I mean? But it also gets Esper Sentinel, which gets more card advantage over time. A card that is already on the top list. Birds of Paradise, another card that's on this list. It has a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another reason why it's better to be playing more white now, and there are reasons to put more white sources in your deck. That's 3 white pips that you would need to have to get all 3 of them out, but luckily you can split some of it up across 2 turns too.
Mana's really good right now.
Yeah, but between this, Grand Abolisher, Silence, Drannith Magistrate, like these are really
3 great reasons to be in white.
Exactly, and very new additions. So it's really nice where 2 years ago we were making podcasts. We were like, oh, I really wish that they would print more stuff to make white viable.
They've done it.
Yeah, right. They did it. And now we're like, man, green feels way behind now.
Super behind. Wait, this is the top 10 creatures, and there's 1 creature on it.
One
and it was
creature
printed in alpha.
It's literally the only thing that green does
Yeah.
in Commander. Yeah, and it's like not that good over here now.
Yeah, and green's like, it's not that it's too super far out, but just like the power of Grand Abolisher and Ranger Captain of Eos is strong enough that it's like stronger than Veil of Summer, I think.
Well, you also don't get speed with Green Ramp either. Like the problem with Green Ramp is that all of the good quick 1-mana ones have summoning sickness.
So you gotta wait. Yeah, it's long-term ramp. It's investment. It's good over a long period of time. But I think
Terrible with ad nauseum.
cEDH might be going in that direction. We've been playing more and more games where a lot of Ristic studies, a lot of grindiness is happening. We might be going back to this world where green is getting a little bit more power, but we'll see.
No, we'll see how it turns out. We're going to move on to our top 2, and if you play any cEDH at all, you probably have a guess what our top 2 is. You're probably just waffling between which one you think is the right one. So pause the video, go down to the comments, tell me which one you think is the top one, and then don't be surprised when we say Thassa's Oracle is our number 2.
Thassa's Oracle is the number 2 creature in the format, one of the best cards in the format, one of the easiest winning conditions in the format, wins the game with Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact. We've all seen 1,000 times.
It's the best Demonic Consultation Tainted Pact combo piece.
By a mile.
Whereas you have Laboratory Maniac and Jace Wielder of Mysteries, this card is really the upper echelon. Let's read what this card does, because we've been trying to get in the habit of that. So Thassa's Oracle is 2 blue for a 1/3 that is a Merfolk Wizard creature. It says, when it enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put up to one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in a random order. If X is greater than or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game.
Yep.
So basically the way that I don't need to explain
We
the
don't
way
need
it
to,
works.
but we can go over the most popular ways to exile your library.
Yeah.
Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact, those are the obvious ones. They win for 3 or 4 total mana, A plus B combo. Very, very good with Thassa's Oracle. It's the best winning condition in the format, some might say. All might and should probably say that.
Yeah.
There's also some ones that have been seeing a little bit of play recently, but I think are really good. One of them is Divining Witch, which acts as a Demonic Consultation on a stick. You have to wait for Summoning Sickness. You have to discard a card to activate it, but it can still exile your library just the same, and that can help get around things like Rule of Law or Ristic Study, not having to cast an extra spell, things like that.
Also takes advantage of the fact that a lot of the counters don't hit creatures too.
Very true. Yep. But there's not those creatures are a little bit more protected. Something like Hermit Druid, which can normally win in a ton of different ways, also just acts as a library remover if you have no basics. So that can help you win the game with Thassa's Oracle. This way, you're, like Cameron said, you're just casting a Thassa's Oracle, activating a Hermit Druid, no non-creatures being activated. So no dispels are good here. No an offer you can't refuse. None of that is going to be helpful against winning with this way. So, and since the format is kind of going towards that Ristic Study world again, at least from my point of view, what I've been seeing, it's nice to have wins that don't really feed the Ristic Study quite as much, since you're just activating a creature's ability.
Yeah, that's also very true too. Again, the Mystic Remora, being able to get around those is very helpful too.
This card normally wins with Food Chain. Also, any outlet that you're looking to draw your deck. Normally, I don't play it unless I'm also playing black cards, because if you can get through your entire deck, if you're at that point where you're looping something, normally you can win with some other way without having to use Thassa's Oracle in your at all. Thassa's Oracle can kind of be a dead card. If it's not winning the game, it doesn't do anything, which is why it's our number 2 pick. That there are times where Thassa's Oracle just doesn't do anything at all. You have to find the other piece. It's just rotting away in your hand.
It is really good at allowing other decks to exist, I think, though, because there's decks like, well, not necessarily that allow them to exist, but it definitely helps make certain decks much more viable. I think a deck like Gromlock was still really powerful and can still do a really good thing with having like a Laboratory Maniac as your win condition, but that's a lot harder to achieve than it would just be with a Thassa's Oracle, which can help you just immediately win the game after you've milled yourself entirely. Another win condition, do we talk about Brain Freeze? Do we say Brain Freeze? Like the whole Underworld Breach Brain Freeze thing that's going on right now too, that usually goes and gets Thassa's Oracle too.
Yep, normally with Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Underworld Breach, you can mill your entire library and then cast Thassa's Oracle. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You could Brain Freeze all of your opponents and just have them draw for turn. turn, but sometimes it's
quicker.
easier. Yeah, it's quicker. I've seen some Cavern of Souls be played recently. I'm playing it in Blue Farm as a way to, one, make sure that you can get out your Grand Abolisher so that you can get an uncounterable Grand Abolisher into play. Probably should have talked about Cavern of Souls when we talked about Grand Abolisher, but I'm talking about it now. Grand Abolisher is helpful in also making your Thassa's Oracle uncounterable if that's something that you're looking for.
That's true. And I know we've been saying that this is the best combo piece in the format, and this is why. It is so difficult to interact with, which coming from Thassa's Oracle players, like on the Thassa's Oracle side of things, that's freaking great.
That's why we play it.
That's why we're playing it, is because it's so difficult to interact with. That's what I'm looking for in a win condition. I don't want to be blown out super easily and then feel silly with my hand in my graveyard and my library completely exiled, right? Like I want this to be tougher to deal with so that I can win more games that way.
Yeah, Thoracle is the reason. It's the main reason why I think there's not more removal seeing play in the format, because Doomblade doesn't kill Thassa's Oracle. It doesn't stop that. It's just an example. Doomblade's bad removal, but why play removal when you can just play a counterspell, because a counterspell can stop Thassa's Oracle and also just counter the thing that you're afraid of.
Right?
Well,
yeah,
it doesn't always work, obviously. But
you can counter the Diabolic. You can, what is the card? You can counter the Consultation or the Tainted Pact.
right, and then you can still not lose the game.
Exactly, yeah.
But nonetheless, Thassa's Oracle is the strongest win condition in our format. It's going to see play until it's banned, and maybe one day it will be. But for now, we play it.
Yeah. And we're going to move on to our number one card, and I think we all kind of knew what this was going to be.
Another drum roll. Blah, blah, blah.
Dockside Extortionist.
Dockside.
Yes, this is a 1/2 Goblin Pirate. I didn't look it up. It's when it enters the battlefield, you create the number of treasures equal to the number of artifacts and enchantments that your opponents control.
That's correct.
This is 6 mana. This is 12 mana. This is...
Sometimes 3 mana.
I made one for 42 mana today.
Yeah, Dockside can make an enormous amount of mana. It gives red the big boost that red has right now. It makes you want to be in red, because just having that power in your deck turns things like Neoform, Eldritch Evolution, Demonic Tutor, Worldly Tutor, any tutor that can find Dockside Extortionist. It now turns all of those cards into Dockside Extortionist. It turned everything that can get Dockside Extortionist into another Dockside Extortionist, which makes it really, really fucking good.
Yeah, the ceiling for it is so high that even, spending a tutor and the card for Dockside Extortionist just to get 6 mana, it can still really help you out quite a bit.
Nothing else does that. Nothing hits that rate the same way. Now, it can get 0. It can make 0 treasures. It can make 1 or 2 treasures, and those can feel pretty bad. But those situations don't happen often. And if those situations are happening, that means that none of your opponents have any mana out, which is pretty good for you, unless they're all like creature decks or something like that. It's normally, it doesn't happen often, and when it does, it's not the end of the world. But the ceiling is just so incredibly high. Like we've talked about, it can make 6, 8, 10 mana in a turn. And not only that, it's a combo piece. Combos with things like Emil that can flicker it to make more treasures than the activation of Emil, so you can make infinite mana, win with Thrasios after you draw in your whole deck. You can win with Temur Sabertooth, Baron Master Wizard.
Merciless Evacuation or Eviction.
There's ones for every color that this deck can win with. You can win in every single color. You can win in mono red. You can win in so many different ways, making infinite treasures and then using those treasures for an outlet, which is kind of a fun, unique aspect of cEDH, I think.
Yeah, no, I think so too. It's great pre-ad nauseum. It's great post-ad nauseum. It can help you to build back.
It's great against ad nauseum players because they're going to have a lot of rocks, so you'll be able to make a lot of them. You'll be what?
I also like... It's weird to say that this is an aspect of cEDH that I like, but all decks know that there's going to be Dockside Extortionist at the table in some form or fashion. So you can play clones, cheap clones like the Phantasmal Image we talked about.
Yeah, Fimage really only sees play because Dockside Extortionist exists.
Right? So being able to copy your own Dockside Extortionist to make even more mana just adds to a ton of the possibilities that you have then, too. Do we say Cloudstone Curio? Because that's another really common way.
You win mono red or any color at all.
Yeah, it allows this to be a mono red outlet then too.
Yep. Yeah, and Dockside, I mean, the main reason why it's the number one creature is that it sees play in every red deck. Yeah. There's no red deck that wouldn't play it. I don't care if you're playing Collector Oof and Stony Silence. I feel like you should still probably play Dockside Extortionist just in case you get it before those.
Yeah, I mean, there are decks that are completely built around winning with Dockside Extortionist. Corvold would be much worse if it didn't have...
It wouldn't exist without Dockside. Corvold basically is
food
Dockside
chain,
the deck.
but it would just suck a lot more.
Suck, yeah.
Yeah, so Dockside... And again, the reason why we have it ahead of Thassa's Oracle is because it does more than just win you the game in the best way. Not only is it one of the better win conditions, but it also can just push you ahead to where you need to be mana-wise.
I have a hot take. I think Dockside should have been a white card.
Dockside probably should have been a white card,
It's the
right?
ultimate catch-up card. It catches you up plus times 1,000. I mean, not really. It just catches you up to all of them at the same time, but it feels like a white card.
I think that makes sense because it was created in a Commander product, and a lot of the Commander products, will be designed more for Commander. So I think that creating a catch-up card for a starter deck like that would be a lot better.
Now they know, though. Now they know Dockside's too strong. They can't print another one, like a 3-mana white one with Flash or something. That's what I want.
Yo, a 3-mana white one with Flash? They have their own. It's called Smothering Tithe.
Okay, that's true.
That's the fixed one.
Right. Dockside, strongest creature in Magic. All of
Hands
these
down.
creatures, well, not maybe Magic, but in cEDH specifically, in Commander, it's the strongest one. All of these creatures are seen play in basically any deck that can play them.
If you're going to a tournament, you will see all of these cards at every single table.
Especially at the high-end tables, especially once the 4-color piles start making their ways to the top. They're all playing all of these cards, and I think it's why these cards are all like some of the most played cards in the format.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. That's our top 10 creatures in cEDH. That's exactly what Play to Win has to say about them. If you have different creatures that you would put in your top 10, maybe you're not wrong. Let us know what they are in the comments below.
Maybe you are wrong.
Maybe you are wrong.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support us directly, you can do so at patrons like our $100 patrons.
Demon of Razgriz and Baby Jeebus.
If you want to find any of our merch, you can go to playtowinmtg.com.
If you want to support the channel at no additional cost to you, you can check out our affiliate links down below for the next time you use those services.
Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter for more content.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Eli Richdy,
Jason Perkins,
Man Solo,
Nikola Marakovic,
Steven Schlickdy,
that green guy,
Plantain Jackson,
Isaiah Breliski,
Michael Lyon,
Pedro,
Byron Wang,
C,
Kawaja A. Hamid,
Jacob Depp,
CZ,
Michael Ballou,
Jan Wildfang,
Sleepy Jarvis,
Thomas Bueno.
Jan Wildfang.
I said him. We're down
You
here.
did? Oh my God,
we're
what the
at-
fuck?
I
What?
just said
Thomas
Bueno,
Bueno?
yeah.
Swampy McGee,
David Nelson,
Benny Bianca,
Dormags.
Moxfield. Great.
That wasn't weird.